Hello and welcome back to Seagulls Central. Thank you so much for tuning into the channel, tuning into the podcast again. I really, really appreciate you clicking on this video or audio feed in your podcast feed. It really, really means a lot to me. As you might be able to see here, we're in a slightly different location. I'm trying something new. We will see. We don't know whether we're going to go back to the old Brighton studio. We don't know whether we're going to stay here. We don't know what we're going to do. So bear with me for the moment whilst we make a few. I think it'd be like what the club call those kind of like, off-season changes. They give the stadium a little lick of paint and, redo the seats and stuff like that. We're making a few changes, maybe, I'm not sure, here on Seagulls Central. So let me know what you think. Basically, it just means it's a bit easier for me to make a video if I just do it like this. So anyway, let me know. We've got the Brighton art here. We've got hopefully a fairly nice little setup, but we'll see. We're not too committed. Look, thank you so much for clicking on this video because we've got a lot to get into. A big story emerging today. 3 big stories emerging in the last 24 hours about 3 Brighton players and the state of their futures, with 3 players sounding a little bit unsettled, and I don't really know where it leaves Brighton, and kind of how we go forward in the window with these 3 kind of bombshell statements. You don't really get, you're used to it a lot with Brighton, and we kind of tend to kind of know who's going where each summer. Like, you always know it's like Belabor, or in past it's been like, why did I say Belabor? I meant Basuma, Caicedo, McAllister. You kind of know each summer who it's going to be. When you suddenly have in 24 hours like 3 players going, here's a quote about my future that's a bit weird. It kind of does raise eyebrows a bit. So we're going to get into that. First of all, thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed to this channel. Recently, we hit 1,000 subscribers a couple of days ago. We hit that landmark. It means so much to me. I've been doing this channel for probably, about a year now, properly. So it really, really means a lot that I've been able to get so many of you behind this channel. So many of you watching the last video where we ranked every single Brighton player so far from last season. If you haven't watched that already, please go and watch that video. That's my last video. And everyone who's got involved, everyone who's subscribed off the back of that, it really, really means a lot. And I appreciate all of your support. And hopefully going forward, we're going to be able to continue making some brilliant stuff in this off season, into the new season. I'm really looking forward to it. And one thing I'm going to be launching, and I am launching, and I'm going to be literally launching it. I'm announcing an announcement right now, is that I'm going to be launching a Patreon. In fact, I have launched a Patreon. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's basically a website where content creators can provide extra content for a subscription fee per month. And look, in this case, it's something I do feel a little bit awkward about and a little bit odd about, because to me, just bringing up the whole thing feels a bit weird. However, I do feel like there's a gap in the market for this, in terms of giving very, very regular and in-depth Brighton content. I feel like no one else in the Brighton scene right now will be offering what I'm going to be offering as part of my Patreon. And if you want to get involved, I'll read out what you can do to get involved and what you will get. So there's going to be 3 tiers to the online Patreon website if you sign up. And I would really, if you did, oh my God, it would be amazing. And I'm so excited to start doing this. We got the with Dean tier. Okay, that's going to be £5 a month. For that, you're going to get a Monday and Friday access to the Seagulls Central bonus podcast. So what I'm going to be doing is doing a daily podcast every single day. I'm going to be jumping on an audio podcast in your ears, in your feed, on your way to work, on your way back from work, on your way to the gym, whatever you're doing throughout your day, you'll be able to get it in the morning with all the latest Brighton news, transfer news from the day before, overnight, landing in your feed early morning. You will get Monday and Friday access to that daily podcast if you get the with Dean tier. For the Amex tier, £7.50 a month, you get Monday, Wednesday, Friday access to this podcast. Plus, you get early access to my YouTube videos. And then finally, there's the Goldston tier, which I can't actually, for some reason, seem to get up. You get Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday access. You get all 5 days in your working week access to the Seagulls Central bonus podcast. You get early access to YouTube videos, and you get a monthly Q&A exclusive to the Patreons where you can ask any questions, and you're also going to get a kind of general bumper package of exclusive content going forward on Brighton Hove Albion. Look, it feels weird kind of proposing this and almost kind of like feel like I'm prostituting myself to the audience. But if you're not interested, this channel's going to keep going as it is. A couple of times a week I'm going to be uploading. Nothing's changing here. Nothing will be compromised. But what I am going to try and do is just try and give it a go and commit to kind of making a podcast every day. And look, for the price of, a £5 a month, just over £1 a week to get some extra content, I think it could be really interesting to try. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and we'll move on with our lives. So sorry for that little period there. If you've skipped through that, totally fair enough. Let's get on to the main story. And that main story is that we have 3 players in the last 24 hours talking about their Brighton futures. Pervis Estupiñán, Yasin, Ayari and Matt O'Reilly all coming out recently, talking about where they think their future lies at the Albion. And it's not all been massively pretty. Let's just call it as it is. Pervis Estupiñán has essentially said in an interview last night after Ecuador qualified for next year's World Cup, everyone's so joyous and happy. He basically gave an interview to the Ecuadorian press where he said that he's told Brighton he wants to leave this summer and the club are going to try and facilitate a move. Massive news for a player who's now been at the club for 3 years. This has been the end of his 3rd season. Obviously, after Mark Cucurella left the club, he was brought in 22. It's weird. I'll read you the quote. So, Pervis Estupiñán has said this to El Canal de Futbol. The club knows I'd like to continue growing and they understand that. I've spoken with them and they've given me the freedom to make a decision and see what's on the table. Now, look, it's not necessarily like a transfer request, but what that is, you don't go public with something like that unless you're almost trying to force it, almost unless I think your agent is trying to kind of tell you to do so. Clearly, he's getting to a point, and I think, it's something I've thought about recently in recent weeks around his position. 27 years old, coming up to 28, into the prime of his career. If you'd asked me like a year and a half ago where he'd be when he's 28, I'd say he'd absolutely have been at a top club, a club in consistent European football, Champions League football even. But in the last kind of 18 months, the last year or so, we've seen a player who is definitely quality, but is probably, in my opinion, at the level of Brighton. It's the level of like an 8th place Premier League side, a 7th place Premier League side, maybe a Europa League kind of side. I'm not sure from what I've seen of Pervis Estupiñán in recent months that he's a top player who at 28 is going to go to an elite football club. Now, what he might do, and I think this is very likely, that he might get a move to like Manchester United, a conventionally big club, a Tottenham, for example, who, can offer him a bumper package of wages, but it might not necessarily be that kind of big move in terms of going and fighting for Premier League titles. You've seen Liverpool looking for a left back. You've seen Man City looking for a left back. Neither of those sides have essentially pursued Pervis Estupiñán, but he's clearly at a point where he's kind of agitating for a move. It feels a little bit bittersweet because I think with these kind of things, if those conversations have gone on behind the scenes, I'm sure they do. I'm sure if you're a 27-year-old player who's been at Brighton for 3 years, you probably think, you know what, let's see what's out there. Let's see if I can get a big move, a big money move to get me into the kind of 150 grand a week kind of ballpark. I totally understand it, but I think going public with it is really interesting. You saw it. You saw it with like the Caicedo situation. I mean, the amount of twerking that guy and his agent did. You've seen it before, Trossard, where the players kind of give interviews, then it gets a bit sour. And I think the risk is with this is like, if we hear this rumbling on a little bit now, I mean, you've even seen the reaction on social media in the last few hours since this quote dropped overnight. It's not great. People are going like, well, crack on, mate. If you want to go, go. And I do kind of share that sentiment because I kind of think like, look, at the end of the day, he's an excellent player. He's been great for us. But the idea that he's irreplaceable, I'm quite relaxed about that. I think we can definitely replace Pervis Estupiñán. If he'd asked me at the end of his first season, I think it would have been a very, very different story. But I think ever since that Ajax away game, I remember being there, seeing him come on. Definitely came on too early after an injury. Immediately got injured again. I don't think we've really seen the same player since then. And it's a shame. So for me, the idea that we couldn't replace him, I'd be quite relaxed about it. I think Brighton could probably get quite good money for a player coming into the prime of their career. Left backs, obviously quite hard to come by. There have been, obviously Man City and Liverpool now solving that, but a few elite clubs looking for new left backs. Man United particularly, obviously Luke Shaw's future looking essentially over at Manchester United. Malacia, they've got a strange left back setup at the moment in terms of no one really pinning down that spot. You could see that being quite an interesting move. We've heard at this, a couple of weeks ago, reports around the start of the summer window when it opened on June the 1st around how Man United were interested in him. We've not heard any formal reports around clubs kind of genuinely making offers or sniffing around him, but it does seem like something that might develop now that these quotes have come out. It might have alerted clubs. I don't know. I think it feels a little bit sour, and if I was going to make a prediction, I think this might get a little bit ugly. In a way, I kind of see it from his perspective. You're a player who essentially does need to that age, you do need to think about your future. I get it, but I think it's the way you go about it. So, be interesting to see what goes on with him. And then we've also had quotes from Yasin Ayari after these, bout of international games that we've had over the last few days. After Sweden have played last night, Yasin Ayari's come out and essentially said, I have no idea about my future. I don't know what's going on. The quotes he's given is, my gut feeling says, I don't know what to do. What he's done in these quotes, he essentially said, I'm happy at Brighton, but it sounds like the journalist has kind of been pressing for his opinion on kind of what he wants to do, asking if, he wants to go to a bigger club anytime soon. Yasin Ayari says, at the end, to be honest, my gut feeling says I have no idea. I don't know anything right now. My focus is on where I am right now. I don't like that. My agents will take care of that. I just focus on my own. I mean, that feels a bit ominous, doesn't it? He goes, I'm happy. I'm safe where I am. I've done well, I feel in a good position, but you never know what happens. And like those quotes are kind of like, that again feels like the kind of quote you give when you're kind of posturing to maybe move on from a football club, kind of going, yeah, I'm happy, I'm happy, but I'll let my agent handle things. Like, what was it, my focus is where I am now. I don't know what's going on. My gut feeling says I have no idea. If you were happy and you were looking forward to next season, would you not just say, I'm happy where I am. I'm looking forward to challenging next season and doing the best I can in the Brighton shirt. Feels a little bit weird, particularly for me, for a player who, look, he's been great. I think he's been a very, very good player. I've probably put him in the very good category for my rankings last week. However, again, not an irreplaceable player. A player who at 21 played one season of Premier League football. I'd be very interested to see where he sees his future right now, looking at 2 years' time. I think if he was saying these kind of things, I'd kind of understand it a bit more. But I think right now it does feel a bit odd that he's coming out and making these statements. To me, if I was a betting man, I'd be saying this guy's going to still be at the club, at the end of the transfer window. I think Fabian Hurzeler absolutely loves him. And the prospect for a 21, 22-year-old midfielder to be consistently playing in the Premier League, I think is a massive opportunity for him. And I can't imagine there are going to be many clubs kind of beating the door down to sign him right now. And, as I say, for a manager who loves him, I think, look, Brighton are clearly going to strengthen. They're strengthening in the defence at the moment. A couple of strikers coming in as well, winger. They're obviously going to strengthen in midfield again after, they obviously brought in quite a few players last summer. Diego Gomez in the winter, Matt Sweefer, etc., etc. Jack Hinshelwood doing so well. Yasin Ayari coming through. However, I think they are going to strengthen again in that midfield. Still kind of needing to replace that void left by kind of your Billy Gilmores, your Caicedos, your McAllisters and stuff. Yasin Ayari is going to be a part of that, isn't he? Of course he's going to be a part of that. And I just think these quotes are weird. Like, maybe that is just something that happens as a footballer. Maybe that is just something you do. Like, you constantly are kind of trying to keep your powder dry on where your future is. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. To me, it feels a little bit pointless. It feels futile. It feels like I don't get why you would do that. To be fair, I was reading a bit of analysis from Brian Owen at the Argus, and he was essentially saying that he thinks he felt from actually like literally listening to the interview as opposed to just reading the quotes that the journalist was the journalist was kind of asking very leading questions and was essentially asking him like, why are you still at Brighton when you're playing for the Swedish national team and doing so well? Do you not want to move to a more famous club? So I suppose maybe that's why it kind of resulted in those quotes. I think it's a weird one, and I think to get that kind of double whammy within the space of 6 hours, both of those players saying the same thing, is a bit annoying. It's a bit weird. And then with the day before, we're hearing stuff from Matt O'Reilly as well. It makes everything way more complicated. So Matt O'Reilly's been another one who in the last few days has spoken around his future. He has come out. I mean, the headlines have been like, Matt O'Reilly slams Fabian. That kind of thing's been going on. What he's really said is that he's basically kind of come out with some quotes around how he's been a bit unhappy with the position he played this season and felt like actually his best position is slightly different to what Fabian Hurzeler had been putting him in. Sky Sports at the same time as those quotes kind of dropping, kind of put a story out saying that Everton are interested in him, and it's looking likely that he will be available for transfer this summer. We really heard it even after kind of like February, March time. Roma showing interest. It's seeming like he was a player who would be open if Brighton got a decent bid for him. It feels very odd after kind of signing him less than a year ago for 25 million quid, and him at times looking like a good player. I'll read out some of these quotes. He goes, "I'm best in the number 8 position where I can go box to box. I've only played 2 games there. Otherwise, I've been used as a winger, false 9 or something else. It's hard to showcase yourself when you're in a position you're not completely happy with. I'm just expressing my opinion. I can play better for the team if I'm in the number 8 role. My coach said I needed to work on my defensive mindset so I could defend better and help the team. It's been tough when you haven't been able to go out and give it your all. The last 6 weeks I've been in a better place. I just need to focus on me and my football, and then everything will fall into place." So, me reading that, I wouldn't say that's a massive statement in terms of like him talking about leaving the club. But what I think it does do is it creates a bit of a difficult atmosphere, a bit of a strange atmosphere when there's clearly interest in him. There's clearly kind of media speculation about him potentially leaving the club after really not long at the club. And then he's kind of coming out talking about how he's been a bit unhappy with the position. He's had to hold talks with Fabian Hurzeler about kind of the role he's playing. If it were me, again, I bet my money that he's going to be here next season. I think we saw a player who, even after he came back from his injury, still looked a little bit like he was struggling for a few months afterwards. You could tell by his gait and his movement a little bit that I felt that he was still playing with some sort of injury or quite maybe just not sharpness. And ultimately, he struggled to get into the team. I think, particularly when Jorginho Rutter was fit, there wasn't really a place for him, We only really saw Matt O'Reilly towards the end of the season after Rudd got injured, playing at right wing, playing a kind of central attacking midfielder. To me, it's interesting. I don't see him. The games I've seen him play in this kind of second half of the season, I didn't really see a kind of box-to-box number 8 midfielder. I saw a player who did look more like a number 10. And I know for Celtic, that was his role, but he doesn't strike me as a player who's going to be like, getting back, making tackles. He feels to me a little bit more like a kind of a Pascal Gross kind of player who, to be fair to him, I guess did do that a little bit, but that wasn't massively his game, was it? I think it'd be interesting because Brighton if that's his role and he thinks that's his role, Brighton he's got a lot of competition in that role, as I spoke about a minute ago. Mats Wiefer, Diego Gomez, Jack Kinchwood, Yasin Ayari. Like, there's lots of options that Brighton can put in that central midfield. So it's going to be interesting for him. If it were like, I also noticed, and this might speak to nothing, but like he changed his Instagram profile picture the other day from a photo of him in a Brighton kit to one of him in his national team Denmark kit. I don't know. I think if Everton came in for him, would he want to take that move? If like Roma did come in for him, would he want to take that move? It would be interesting. I think if it were me, you've got to try and stay and do another season in the Premier League, because I think if you come for a season and then go out of the Premier League, I think that kind of reputation does follow you a little bit. So it would almost be like you can't cut it in the Premier League. And I think we've seen a real player there, a player who I'd be really excited about seeing next season. A player who can get up and down, who can create goals, who can score goals, who's got a lovely touch, who can link up with players brilliantly. But we just need to see a bit more of that kind of sharpness from him. And I think we obviously saw that towards the end of the season. I think it's one of those, if you had to, pin me down on it, I would say we're going to see him next season in a Brighton shirt. But could it be a case that if by like next January he's not happy with his playing time, that he's going to start agitating for a move as well? Because he'll see his ceiling higher than Brighton as well, and it's about for him how he's going to get there. I think generally on this whole point, it's interesting around like all of the comments that have been made by these players in recent days. I think the only one really that I'm going to take with any kind of gravitas is the Pervis Estupiñán one. I think that one is a bit difficult. It seems like only because it feels like the player out of all of those ones where it is the most likely. It feels like the other two have only had one season in the Premier League for Brighton, whereas this guy's done 3 seasons. He's now 28, 27, and he's going to be looking for that big move, and there are options in the market for him. If I had to pin me down on that, I'd be saying that Pervis Estupiñán will be the only one going. Where does that leave Brighton in terms of replacing him? Obviously, Valentin Barco. A lot of confusion around that deal. Obviously, going out on that loan, we all thought it was a loan with an option to buy to Strasbourg. Now talk that it might not be the option to buy. He might be coming back in the summer for us. So where does that leave us? Ferdi Kadioglu obviously played a lot at left back in Turkey. But I was kind of under the impression that he might be used as a bit more of a right back next season. So, there are a lot of questions to answer. Brighton do have options. And it sounds like, there were reports today that Brighton are looking for a left back. Again, a fella, I can't remember where he's from, we've been linked with a £4 million move for a left back. So it will be interesting. Pervis Estupiñán been a top player for us, but it does feel like probably it is his time, particularly if he's now agitating. I'm not necessarily sure his level is the very elite upper echelon of kind of British football, international football. I'm really not so sure about that, but he could certainly go to Man United and make them a better team because he is a top player. He could definitely do the same at Tottenham, and he's got a lot of options. So yeah, look, it's an interesting conversation and one that I'm sure will rumble on for the rest of the summer. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm going to be back in a couple of days' time with a brand new concept video, a bit like the one we did last time around ranking every player in the Brighton squad. I've got another one of those that I'm going to be releasing in a couple of days. That's all filmed, all done, all ready to go, and that'll be dropping on the channel in a couple of days' time. It's the kind of thing that if you are a Patreon member, part of at least the Amex tier, you will be receiving that early and getting in on the party. So look, I feel a bit awkward bringing it up again, but if you haven't, if you want to look at any details, get into the description. All the details are there. You can click on the link, you can have a look, you can have a read, you can take your time with it. There's no pressure. I'm still going to be here, and I feel very uncomfortable asking for this. So whatever happens, I appreciate your support. Thank you so much for tuning into the channel. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button below, and I will see you on the next one. And also, I forgot my phrase there. Shall we do that again? And as always, up the Albion.